There we go, Rob. That was one of the best yet. Oh, hello, Rob. How are you?
Hello, Jeremy.
Let's see that hat. Let me see that beanie. Let's see that beanie.
She's beautiful.
That's gorgeous.
The irony is we're showing this hat and it's 70 degrees in Chicago and 52 in New York on February 27th. I don't know what's happening.
Those that question climate change anyway, with that said, Rob, wonderful hat, wonderful face. I'm genuinely excited to have you on the pod, on the VOD. You're a legend within our ecosystem. You have become a new friend over the past several months. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who I have the pleasure of speaking with right now? Who are you?
Yeah, I mean, I said this to you, but for the folks listening, if you look behind me, I have a very carefully curated wall of the things that are most important to me. And I'll just say very quickly, you'll see a banner at the top. What does this make possible? That's become sort of my go-to rallying cry when things are hard, like just to be able to look at it differently and say, hey, it started with COVID, obviously, where things were really hard. And I read this article that just knocked me on my socks, of, hey, you can talk about all the things that are bad right now, or you can ask yourself a very important question. And that question is, okay, got it. Things are tough, but what does it make possible? And it's just a way to open your mind and sort of open up your thinking to, more positive thoughts. So I just fell in love with that. And then you'll see my three boys here when they were young, and now they've got beards, and they're 2 out of the 3 are taller than me. And you'll see a lot of music around here. I'm a huge music fan. So, for me, who am I? I am a family first, very proud father of 3 boys. I've known my wife for 35 years. We went to summer camp together.
That's amazing.
Yeah. We've been married 20 years. She's my favorite person in the world. And then there's the work side, and it purposely comes in that order because that is how I feel and that is how I view the world. And I got super lucky. I was an early digital guy. Actually my first digital job was a Chicago-based company. No one who's listening to this will know who this is, but it was a company called tunes.com, Tunes. Scott, that's where I met Scott Hess. And I worked for a legend, Howard Tullman. That was in the late 90s, but I sort of fell in love with digital very early. Was lucky enough to be the first sales rep at rollingstone.com when they launched their first ever website, which was pretty awesome.
Crazy.
But then I fell in love with this new thing, and it was called search, which no one knew what it was. But I worked for a company that had just rebranded from GoTo to Overture. And I was like employee number 6 in New York. And we were selling search ads before search ads was a thing. This was 2002. So, 22 years ago. They got acquired by Yahoo. I worked at Yahoo for a long time. And then, moved to Microsoft and did some other startup things in between. But I would say, I just love our industry. I love our business and I love what it does for people. I love what it does for businesses. And I've always had a piece of me throughout all of this, which was, how do I give back? And that's a big part of my life. It's a big part of my work life. And certainly, the reason I got so excited about OhHello was, yes, this idea to give back, but give back in 2 ways. Give back to people who need it, who need some, career advice, some help. But obviously, you've built a platform that allows people to decide, 1% or 100% or anywhere in between to go to a charity. And I just think that's incredible.
That's amazing, Rob. Well, you are a legend within our advertising, marketing, tech, SaaS media ecosystem. So I'm so excited to have you on the platform.
Okay.
And just also understanding and knowing that family comes first, that your boys, your wife, that, that's in such a similar way. That's why I have the pictures of my family over my left shoulder, over my right shoulder, and everything's strategically neatly placed outside of my phone charger being there. But for that reason too, and you know what? We always need to be plugged in. I look at it that way. But I love the way that you phrased it and that you brought us all into your world, because what makes OhHello so special and what makes it special to have an executive like yourself is it's a place where people could be vulnerable. It's a place where people can drop their guard and understand, like, hey, I've got questions. I'm going through something, or how do you do this? Or I just want to meet Rob Wilk. I want to meet this person, that person, and be able to provide guidance, because we all go through these different points in our career. What excites you about mentorship and just being a part of the OhHello tribe?
How much time do you have?
We can do a two-parter.
It's sort of funny. I was thinking about, getting ready to have this conversation with you, and it's in a perverse way, giving back is actually a very selfish endeavor for me. And I know that sounds backwards, but the joy that I get from it is why I do it. Whether it is giving money to charity, whether it's raising money, whether it's sitting on a board of a nonprofit, or whether it's giving advice that you just see someone's light bulb go off and they have a smile like, oh, that was so helpful. I've done tons of mentoring. I've actually just had my first OhHello mentorship as well. And
You just did. You crushed it.
he was so grateful. He was so grateful just to be able to speak openly and honestly, knowing, stays between us. And, this particular person was like, hey, I've been an individual contributor for a long time. I'm ready to step into management. How do I do that? How did you do it? What mistakes did you make? And believe me, I made an ungodly amount. And we hung up the phone, and I just felt great for the rest of the day. Like, my wife has this thing that she always says to me when I come home from work, and I've got a smile on my face, she'll know it's because I was able to help someone, right? And there's the folks at Microsoft. If anyone from Microsoft from my team back in the day watches this, they'll know that I'm obsessed with she's a European CEO named Margaret Heffernan, and she's she's written so many books. She's got great TED Talks. Like, I encourage anyone to learn about her, but she talks a lot about the importance of, in your career, a lot of times your success can be sort of aligned with people's perception of your degree of helpfulness.
Love that.
And
Yeah.
think about all the people you've worked with, Jeremy, over the years, like different companies where they're like, oh, we have this problem. Who's the go-to person? And there's always someone's name that comes up, right? She's the one. We got to call her and get her in the room. And what you find is those go-to people are people who are willing to be helpful. And to me, I think it's like built into my chromosomes at this point. I love to be helpful, and it feels good for me and it helps others. So it's like just such a win-win.
That wasn't perverse. It was, I really appreciated the way that you explained it. I appreciated the references, and just also just there are few things more important than when your spouse, your significant other, your family sees that you're happy and what's bringing you joy. Because if you're happy and if you're joyful, then the people around you usually are happy as well. And it's contagious. Being able to,
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
you're good, you're good.
I'll just say we have a problem in the work world, especially in our industry. And the problem is it's becoming joyless. Go talk to some of your friends about how is work going right now. Now, it's just a weird time, and this is a very US based conversation, but we have a very, contentious election that everyone's looking at. We have some economic, concerns. There's still a COVID hangover, but like a lot of the people that I know that are, very senior to not very senior, doesn't matter. There is a degree of joylessness that permeates throughout all of my discussions. And I think it's a shame. And I am like the biggest cheerleader and an unabashed, like passionate believer in work should bring you joy. It should. It doesn't always have to be a party. That's not my point. But it should fulfill you in a way that makes you happy. And if it doesn't, I think a lot of people think that, well, that's just work and I'm just going to be unhappy. And I just refuse to believe that that's true. I just do.
I have such a similar philosophy and such a similar belief to you as you do, Rob. Just you have to be happy. There are gonna be days and hours of the day that just absolutely suck. It's life. Like,
Of course.
comes with it. But if you're not having fun at work, get out of there. Go find something else. Like, it's the people around you. It's the problems that you're solving. It's being able to help amazing clients, work with great colleagues. If you're not liking it, and if it's a disaster, life is too short to just hokey pokey around. Like, it's just, I get it. So help me understand, help our audience understand, Who are some of the mentors or friend tours that have made a profound impact on you and your career thus far?
Yeah, I'm gonna give 3 shout outs.
Love it.
Yeah, I've had many more people, help me in my career and be gracious. I just don't want to take up, hours and hours. But I sort of looked at my career as like early stage, mid stage, late stage, if you will.
Yeah.
And my first job in advertising was 1996. Young and Rubicam. If anyone out there knows Y&R, I think it's now VML Y&R, and it's gone through a bunch of iterations. But it was the most New York job. I was on Madison Ave, literally 40th and Madison, actually 285 Madison, and I was an assistant media planner with this much experience. I was an entry level guy, and I just got connected to this woman who was my first manager. Her name is Althea Beaton. She's now Althea Beaton Ducard. So fun story, Malik Ducard is the chief product officer at Pinterest. That's his wife. Yeah. So she was my first boss. And the biggest thing I learned from her is she was the hardest working person I ever met. And I'm a pretty damn hard worker. I'm not scared to
Yeah.
work hard.
Yeah.
She left me in the dust. And she took the time when I was young to sit down and teach me the business when she had 100 things to do. I mean, I saw her to-do list. People
Yeah.
still wrote them down in those days.
Of course.
And she was so gracious with her time. And she was a huge fan of mine and was an advocate. And she was the one who sat me down, 2 years into the job and said, I think you're on the wrong side of the table. Because I was a media buyer.
I love this. Keep on going. Keep on going.
Yeah, I was a media buyer. And she was like, you shouldn't be buying. You should be selling. Like, that's where you belong. Which leads to person number 2. So the person who gave me my first shot in sales was a guy named Todd Anderman. He actually was at tunes.com. He was working at Ziff Davis at the time, which was before it was digital, it was a magazine publishing company.
Yep.
It was a monster, PC Magazine, PC World. I worked for a magazine called Family PC, and he was the first one that gave me my break in sales as an account executive when I didn't have any sales experience. But the same thread, he took me under his wing, taught me so much. He's such a good human being, cares about people, so smart. We actually did a bunch of work together at different companies, but I just always found him to be like the perfect combination of super smart, but also just a great human, like a great person. We're still very close friends to this day, 20 plus years later. So he really helped me, I would say, mid-career. And then when I joined Microsoft, I worked for what I would argue is probably one of the best leaders in our industry, which is a gentleman named Rick Vanderkooy, who he's been at Microsoft for 25 years. He was the former CFO of Europe, moved to the US to run the ads business. And he was chairman of the IAB for a while. Like he's incredible. So he really helped me sort of scale.
Yeah.
I had run teams before, but now I was running teams that were, starting in the hundreds and eventually thousands of people, not only in the US, but then globally. Like there's just no way I wouldn't have had any success there without him by my side. And he has 2 sayings that I repeat constantly. Number 1 is he always talks about no heartbeat wasted. And it's funny because people who don't know him think he's impatient. Like he has sort of a reputation of being quick and like get to your point.
Yeah.
He's not. He just is he's a firm believer in no heartbeat wasted, whether that's at work or in his personal life, with his family, with his wife, with his kids. He's all about no heartbeat wasted, which I just love.
Being
But
deliberate.
I'm sorry?
Being deliberate. That's how I
And when it was time to have fun, he could do that too, right? Because he didn't want to waste that moment to enjoy that moment either. You just had to understand that like he's built in such a way where he just believes that, to his core. He was also always the smartest person in the room, but never made anybody feel like that. You know what I mean? Just like subtly brilliant, but like wasn't going to rub it in your face. And when I took the job with Microsoft, he took me to lunch on my first day, and I asked him a very simple question. I said, "What do you want our relationship to be like?" And it was just my way of saying, like, some people want updates every day. Some people like, I don't care what you do. Like, I wanted to understand that. And he said, "You're here for a reason, and I'll never sit in your chair." And I worked for him for 7 years. and he never once sat in my chair. Not once.
An amazing leader. That is absolutely a leader.
He is incredible. He's incredible.
That's amazing, Rob. You've done a lot throughout your career. When you think through just being a commercial operator, a global leader, what are some characteristics that just define you both professionally and personally that you're going to be bringing to the OhHello tribe and to the mentees that are booking time with you?
Yeah. I hate the word, but I love the definition. I just think authenticity has been like stretched too thin at this
It's been
point. Like,
bastardized recently. Yeah,
yeah,
recently.
everyone's like authentic this, authentic that, but like I'll just use a different term, which is like if you want my real opinion, my real thoughts, my real help, that's what you're gonna get. I don't. I always joke like I'm the worst poker player in the world because I'm a terrible liar. So I just don't bother trying. Like I'd rather just tell you the truth. So I've learned a lot over the years. And again, I've run companies that were pre-revenue to, Microsoft was 18 billion a year globally. So I think I've got pretty good experience sort of across the different sizes, different types of companies, but also, Jeremy, we've talked enough. Like I'm
Yeah.
always smiling. It's not bullshit. I want people to find what they value and go like get that. You know
Yep.
what I mean? I know it sounds
Yep.
sort of silly and simple, but a lot of people can't answer the question, especially folks younger in their, earlier in their career. What do you value? Just talk about that. And they struggle with answering that. And my view is like, if you can't answer that, you're going to have a difficult time finding meaning in the work that you do because you don't know what you're sort of going after in terms of the values that are most important to you.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Sure, I do. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I think
So
you'll get a
being
lot of
yeah, being real, being authentic, no fluff, no bullshit, and just being able to help people find the value. Like I think a unique skill set that I've picked up on over the past few months has also just been approachable and no ego. Like you've had giant roles, and when I talk to you as someone who's a little bit further ahead in your career than mine, but relatively similar footing, you handle it with a just like, oh yeah, sure, just being able to be approachable to. I can picture you talking to a 25-year-old, a 35-year-old, a 45-year-old, or an 85-year-old, and having the exact same demeanor, which is a really important trait for people that they seem to overlook. Many seem to overlook.
I'm very, first of all, I'm grateful that you say that. It's like the thing I'm most proud of is I am who I am, no matter who I'm with, doesn't matter. I do think right now there are a lot of people who think to be a leader, they need to sort of hold back on who they are. Right. And like nobody wants to follow a plastic leader. Nobody. And they certainly don't want to follow someone who thinks that they're too good for you. There's like no bigger turnoff. If you look at the way that our world has evolved since you and I got into the work world, you know, I'll go back to the Young and Rubicam story. Like all the executives sat on a different floor and they had massive wooden doors and somebody sitting in front so you can't get in. That's the way the world was 30 years ago. Social media and, putting yourself out there as a leader on Instagram or wherever broke down those walls. And now there's an expectation for people who work for you. They want to know you and not just in a meeting and not just what you are at work. They want to know the full you. And I think folks are making a mistake if you don't allow for that. Like I let people see who I am, warts and all, the good, the bad, and anything in between. I don't hide anything. And listen, I think for the most part that works. And there might be some people out there who would say that's not for me, and that's fine. I think the world has evolved to a place now where there is a certain expectation of wanting to know who they work for in a deeper way.
Well said, Rob. What are different causes that are near and dear to you as you are going to be, as you continue to mentor and help people that are booking time with you? When you think through the philanthropic causes that are important to you, your family, what are some of them?
I mean, the biggest one, it's sort of hard to even compete is, and thank you for making sure that they were available to me, is Memorial Sloan Kettering. So for those that don't live in New York or don't know, this is, one of the best cancer treatment hospitals, arguably in the world, but certainly on the East Coast. And my wife was diagnosed with breast cancer during the peak of COVID, and to watch the care that they took care of my wife. And again, let me finish by saying she's doing great. Everything's all good. But we spent a lot of time at Sloan Kettering, and they just took care of her in a way that I've never seen before. And just grateful for their help and grateful for every person who works there. And I'm, just glad to be able to give back in some way to MSK. So,
well, appreciate you being able to talk through that, showcasing that vulnerability, telling the world that the good, the bad, the ugly, warts and all, so to speak. Like, we all go through shit, and so being able to have wonderful access to global, world renowned healthcare is really important. And so Sloan Kettering it's a big one. It's a good one. I've had a couple good friends that, whether they've lived in Chicago, California, New York, anywhere, that have flown out to Sloan Kettering for help. So it's a wonderful cause.
Yep, they're amazing.
They are amazing. So, Rob, before we part, would love to hear just any other guidance that you would tell your younger self, and just parting words of wisdom.
Yeah, I think we covered some of it. I love to keep pushing people on getting crisp on what they value. And I think maybe so I don't repeat myself, what I'll add is be aware that what you value will likely change over time, right? So if I go back to the Rob of the late 90s, early 2000s, I paid for school myself. I had student loan debt. I lived on my brother's couch when I worked at Y&R. So what was my value then? Money and, like working 24/7. Like that was like I needed to get out of my financial situation. I wanted money. And that's why I liked being in sales, because you have some control over your own income, right? As time moves on, you're like, okay, I settled myself, like got myself out of that scenario. And then what I cared more about was like, how do I become a manager? And I spent a long time trying to figure that out. And then there's the manager of managers, and all of that. And then as I got into even the 40s, it was more like, I have so much US experience. I want global experience. I optimize for global experience. The long and short of it is, we're like 4 days away from me turning 51, which is insane. And
Happy
now I
holidays.
know what I value.
What's
And
that?
it's so different. I value people over everything. So when I think about what I want to keep doing, where I want to go next, people is number one. Number two would be, is it a great product or the potential to be a great product? And number three is like, what's the problem that needs to be solved? I like the hard stuff.
Yep. You and I talked about that earlier. Yep.
Yeah, like that stuff really matters to me. And time. Like, listen, I think you're the same way. I'm a million miler. I'm a Delta Diamond for 15 years straight. I could care less about my status on Delta. I just don't care anymore. I want to optimize my time for things that I love with people that I enjoy, and spend as much time with my kids. I've already got one out of the house. My second one will be out in a year. I just think it's okay for people to be honest with themselves, that what you value today at 25 will likely not be the same at 45, and that's great. But staying in tune with what you value, even as it changes, leads to more joy at work and more joy in life.
Amazing parting words of wisdom. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you for listening. This was fantastic. Appreciate you. Thank you, everybody. Look at that OhHello beanie. Look at that OhHello beanie. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, everybody. Until the next one, go book time with Rob.